Hi there, trailer owners. Today we're going to be taking a look at Kodiak's replacement disc brake caliper. These are available for Kodiak disc brakes and axle sizes from 3,500 up to 14,000 pounds. You can also get them in either a Dacromet, E-coat, or Koda Guard finish. If you have a damaged brake caliper on your trailer, you don't have to fret. You don't need to buy a whole new Kodiak brake kit. You can just get a replacement caliper, and we can replace just this component and get you back up on the road. And no matter how it failed, you can just replace the whole caliper, whether you've got a leaking piston to where it's leaking fluid from your caliper, or maybe you had some other type of failure, maybe a bearing failure or something that caused a lot of vibration here, and maybe it caused some damage to the caliper or the pad or any of the mounting there. One of the things I like about this kit is that it comes fully loaded, so that means your pads are already going to be installed on the caliper when you receive it, so you don't have to worry about getting new pads when you buy the replacement caliper. And since this is a direct replacement, it's going to install exactly like it did when you put the original one on that you had purchased. And since it's available in the various different coatings, you can make it match what you had originally and be back up and running just like you were before. Now, if you do need to replace it, what we're going to do is we're going to start by removing our caliper bolts. So we're just going to take these loose. And I actually don't like to take them quite all the way out. I like to loosen them both first. Because if you take one all the way out, when you go to loosen the other one, sometimes the caliper likes to pivot on it. It kind of makes it a little awkward. So if we just get both loose first. We're good there. They're just loose for now. They're not all the way out. Then we're going to come back to the line here on the back side, and we're just going to crack it loose for now. So we're just going to get on there with our line wrench. We're going to crack it loose, and then once we got it cracked loose, I'm actually going to take my wrench and I'm going to just barely snug it on there. That way no fluid can come out, but it's going to be loose enough that I can easily get it off once I pull the caliper off of here. So I'm just going to finish loosening these up now. Now that those are loosened up, we're going to take a screwdriver and we're going to stick it in here. And this is just going to help free up the caliper. Just kind of give it some pressure this way, and that'll free it up. That'll make it a lot easier to remove. Now, your old caliper likely is going to have some of the finish worn, so it'll likely come off of there a little easier. This is a fairly new caliper that we're taking off here, so the finish is still pretty thick on it, and it kind of makes it difficult to take it off, so we are going to have to tap it off of there with a mallet just because of how thick that finish is on it. But now that we've got it off of here, you'll want to make sure you've got your new caliper ready sitting next to you, because we want to try to minimize how much fluid we lose when we take this hose off. Minimizing it is going to not only save you from having to clean up a bigger mess, and brake fluid's very destructive. If you get it on painted surfaces and stuff like that, it likes to eat paint. So you really want to avoid getting it on things. And it also makes it faster for re-bleeding the brakes if we don't lose very much fluid. So if we can minimize that. So now we got it there. We're just going to finish loosening it up. In a lot of cases, once you get it loose, you can finish taking it out by hand, but this particular one here wants to be a little bit troublesome. There we go. And then we're just take that off. I like to take the hose and try to stick it up, but in most cases fluid's going to leak out of it anyway because your reservoir is going to be higher. So now I'm just going to grab the new caliper. We're going to bring that one over. And we're going to hook up our hose first. Try to avoid getting brake fluid on anything if we can. Go ahead and just put a little bit of snug on that, just so that way fluid's not coming out of there. We'll finish snugging it up once we've got it installed. So I'm using a little bit of brake parts cleaner just to ensure I get all that fluid off of there. We don't want anything on our pads or seals or anything like that. It's some pretty nasty stuff. So now that we've got the hose on there, at this point it's just reinstalling it in reverse order of how we removed it. So we're just going to put her back together. Make sure you've got your hose routed exactly how it was before. We'll then torque our caliper bolts to the specifications found in our instructions. And then if you have not done so, after tightening down the bolts, make sure you go back in there and tighten down that line. I highly recommend using a line wrench when removing or tightening down any brake line. It's going to give you more surface area on the nut, but still allow you to slide over the line. And that's just going to prevent you from stripping out the nut. We have line wrenches available here at etrailer.com if you need a set. So now that we've got this one replaced, if you had any other damaged ones at this point, you can go ahead and replace those, because once you've got all these replaced, then you'll need to bleed your brakes again, because we took this hose loose, so we've got air in the system, so now we have to re-bleed. We now need to bleed our brakes. So we've got our cap off. We're going to leave the cap off while we bleed the brakes, because it actually can suck the rubber out from inside and potentially damage it. So we're just going to fill up the reservoir now. We're using .3 brake fluid, which you can get at your local automotive store. And we're just going to fill it up to the first little lip on the inside. We don't want to go all the way to the top, because as we're bleeding this and it's pressurizing the fluid, that pressurized fluid is eventually going to want to depressurize and it's going to slowly come back up, so it can actually overfill. So we want to kind of give us a little gap there. So now we're back here at the furthest brake caliper from our reservoir. Since we mounted it in the front on the driver's side, we're on the passenger side at the farthest back. You want to start at the furthest one away, because that's going to get most of the air out first, making the other brakes easier to bleed. The bleeder screw is a 5/16 in size, that's the size of our wrench, and I just got a hose that's going down into a bucket to drain the fluid out, just so we don't get fluid all over the place. We're going to have an assistant ensure that the fluid doesn't get too low, it maintains topped up, and have them activate the actuator. They can do this by either pulling the breakaway pin, or you could hook up to your truck and use the manual slider on your brake controller. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and we're going to have our assistant go ahead and start it. Let's go ahead, Joe. And we've got nice clean fluid coming out of there, so that's exactly what we want to see. You'll typically get a bunch of air bubbles at first, but then once it comes out clear like that, you can go ahead and take this off, move to the next brake, and so forth. So we're just going to move on to this one. You could go to the other side. At this point, the furthest one's the most important. Typically, you go furthest to closest, but once you get this guy done, it gets the majority of the air out. Hit each other wheel. You usually only got to hit it 1 or 2 times to get the rest of the air out on those. And that completes our look at Kodiak's replacement disc brake caliper.